Hi there, welcome back to the Rare Book Views channel where I talk about how much I love books and people say nice things about it. Thank you to everybody who has sent me a comment or subscribed or supported me somehow in this super nice way of talking to people about books and the love of books. Today I'm actually going to show you a couple of my favorite books. I have had this on the brain because I enjoyed this book. This was on my to be read shelf last time, the time before. Really enjoyed it. I must have read a review of this and it was on my list for a while and I found a used copy. I believe this was $3 and I really enjoyed it. It is about Harper Lee and some research that she did. This author has pieced together that Harper Lee was looking into this interesting murder trial and set of murder trials. It actually reminds me quite a bit about the Murdaugh trial. So if you're into that, you might enjoy this book, which is well written. I really liked it, but she did have to present a lot of information about Harper Lee and Truman Capote and also all the people in this criminal case. And I feel like, I'm not sure if I agreed with the editor, but it is fascinating. So this is Furious Hours by Casey Sepp, probably, maybe Kep. And it is really cool and a really interesting idea. So I love this book. I was at a book sale a couple weeks ago, this month, with a friend of mine who is newly enamored with book sales. And I saw a copy of this in hardcover and said, oh, have you read this? And it was $3. She bought it. I'm very excited because I want someone I know to read it and tell me what they think and how they feel about the level of detail. There's a lot of stuff going on in that book, but it's fascinating because of all the information about Harper Lee and her background. I actually don't have a copy of Harper Lee's books. Still looking. I understand that To Kill a Mockingbird, you can get a nice copy of the book club edition, but it is going to run you about $50. And so I've just never, but I want one. So I'm looking. Maybe this will be a good reason. Maybe I should buy one. I do have some books by Truman Capote, who does come up in this book. They do talk about, in Furious Hours, about the friendship between Truman Capote and Harper Lee, which is really fascinating because it was in the 50s and Truman Capote was an unusual character, not a boring man, who really, I think that people just did not get him at the time. He was kind of an oddball. And Harper Lee was an oddball in the sense that she was a woman who was really interested in research and writing and just did not really find her stride for a while. And Truman Capote was extremely successful with his first book, Breakfast at Tiffany's. A fantastic book. A short novel. I think it is mildly hilarious that this is billed as a short novel and short stories. A short novel and 3 stories. It is not a book of short stories. One of them is a short novel. I just find that, I feel like that is a little insight into Truman Capote. This is the first edition. This is what it looks like. This is damaged. I did get this at a used book sale for $2, so cut me some slack. But you can see the points, which is really cool. The dust jacket is not clipped, and it says $3.50. And the title page in this one is extremely helpful. It lists the printing. This is a fourth printing of the first edition. That means it is the same book that Truman Capote and his publisher sent to the printer. They ran out of copies. They had it printed again and again and again. So no changes, no significant changes or really any changes to the text or to the book, just they printed it again. That's what it usually means. Some people use edition and printing slightly differently, but that's what it should be. This is what the cover looks like. It is a fantastic mustard yellow. You can see whatever water damage happened, there's a little bit here on the cover, but it doesn't really go through to the text, so it's not that bad. And it is fun to read this book in the original version. It's fun to read a vintage copy, I think. As always, if you're going to read a classic book, and you should have a nice copy to do it. It feels good in your hands. So that one is My Breakfast at Tiffany. It does have this on the back cover, and it has an about the author on the back dust jacket flap. And my understanding is that is what it should look like if it's a first edition any printing. And then the printings are listed on the title page or on the copyright page, which is great. So Truman Capote, this was a big hit. If you watch the movie now with Katharine Hepburn, it is visually stunning. What a beautiful movie. It has a couple elements that are a little didn't age well, which is one of the reasons that we get into that. Should we update texts of books that were classics and now have these slight things that trouble us? I don't know the answer to that. But if you do watch the movie, do be aware there's going to be some stuff in there that just would not fly now. We would not watch in a movie theater some of the depictions of people from not in America. Okay, so then in the book about Harper Lee, Furious Hours, the next thing that they really dig into is the situation with In Cold Blood. A great book. There's a great reference to this book in The Gilmore Girls, if you are a fan. Created a new genre, says Rory. Okay, this I believe is the first edition, and it has the price, it has the staining across the top, it has red end papers, it has a red cover with a little bit of gilt, and then the title page says first printing. These really run the gamut in cost. I paid $10 for this at a used bookstore. You could pay significantly more online. You could pay more in a very fancy bookshop. You could get a better price. The first edition, I'm not really sure how big of a run the first printing was, but I feel like it is obtainable, and that might be because he had all of the success with Breakfast at Tiffany. When they printed this book, they were expecting a pretty big audience. It is very different from Breakfast at Tiffany. This is a true crime novel-ish. And the situation with how he did the research for this and then told it as sort of a novel, there's a lot of dialogue that he is imagining. So if this was a Netflix show, it would be based on true events somewhere, rather than actual documentary, which is also interesting. This also would be a fascinating Murdaugh trial carryover. So in Furious Hours, they really get into what was Harper Lee's role in Cold Blood. And this is something that we feel like I think history has lost, because she agreed, she was friends with Truman Capote at the time, and she was writing, and he offered her sort of a gig as his researcher. The Furious Hours throw some shade on how good of a researcher was Truman Capote, and that is a question, frankly, we all have. And interestingly, he wrote In Cold Blood after the murderers were no longer alive. So no one can really cut some of his stuff. It can't be really fact-checked. But Furious Hours, this author really did try to go find people who can speak to how correct did Truman Capote get it, right? Because In Cold Blood is supposed to be basically nonfiction. He is portraying that he interviewed these people and that they told him the real story, the behind-the-scenes story. And Furious Hours, I think, starts to question really how accurate is it, and how careful was Truman Capote in the ways that he arranged these interviews. He got the accused murderers to give him sort of jailhouse interviews, and how he did that is somewhat questionable at this point. At the time, I think everybody believed that Truman Capote did a reasonable job giving them, you know, a normal journalist deal. And in Furious Hours, you really start to wonder how that happened. So it's a really interesting arc for Harper Lee, where she went sort of in her relationship with Truman Capote and what went on in this case. So she had this experience doing the research for In Cold Blood, and then she went to this small southern town and did a bunch of research for a novel she never wrote. And it is fascinating. Furious Hours is really, really fascinating. And like I said, I'm really excited for my friend to read it. And it did start getting me thinking about Truman Capote. And then it's making me think maybe I need a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. I am really frugal. So should I try to buy a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird? Please chime in. Please let me know. I need some guidance from the internet. And if you have a copy of Truman Capote, if you have any other publisher's points, how to tell if they're first editions, please let me know. I would be fascinated to hear about it. Thank you again to everybody who has been nice to me with my channel and is a reader. Thank you for watching. Happy reading.